The KGB story begins in the grim aftermath of World War II, a world scarred by conflict and grappling with unprecedented destruction. The old order was crumbling, and new power dynamics were rapidly taking shape. As the dust settled, the Cold War dawned, casting a long shadow across the globe. Two superpowers, America and the Soviet Union, found themselves locked in a tense ideological battle, a new kind of conflict fought not on traditional battlefields, but in the realms of espionage, propaganda, and political maneuvering. In 1954, seeking to consolidate its power and project its influence, the Soviet Council of Ministers formally established the Komitet Gosudarstvennoy Bezopasnosti, or KGB. This new organization was not born in a vacuum. It was built upon and consolidated the brutal legacy of the Cheka, the NKVD, and the MGB, each a predecessor in the Soviet security apparatus. The KGB's creation was presented as a move away from the excesses of Stalinist terror, a step towards a more rational form of state security. However, beneath the surface, its roots ran deep in decades of repression, political purges, and absolute control. Its core mission was clear: to serve as the unwavering sword and shield of the Communist Party, protecting its power and ideology at all costs. This meant defending the Soviet Union against perceived foreign threats, both real and imagined, and ruthlessly crushing any form of internal dissent or opposition to the communist regime. The KGB's reach was vast, a sprawling network that permeated every aspect of Soviet society. It was responsible for foreign intelligence gathering, counterintelligence operations, the security of the Soviet borders, and most insidiously, the systematic suppression of any form of political opposition within the USSR. After Stalin's death, Nikita Khrushchev initiated a period of de-Stalinization, seeking to reform certain aspects of the Soviet system. But despite these reforms, the KGB remained a powerful and largely unchecked tool of the Communist Party. It was not merely a dictator's enforcer, but an integral part of the Soviet system. The agency quickly ascended to become a central pillar of Soviet power, wielding immense influence within the government and throughout society. Its actions profoundly shaped the nation's politics, culture, and the daily lives of ordinary Soviet citizens. In the tense and suspicious climate of the 1950s, the KGB actively recruited agents abroad, seeking to expand its reach and influence beyond Soviet borders. These agents infiltrated Western governments, intelligence agencies, and other key institutions, while simultaneously, the KGB relentlessly monitored its own citizens, ensuring ideological purity and suppressing any deviation from the Communist Party line. To the KGB, the world was a vast chessboard, a stage for a global power struggle, and the KGB was determined to control every square, to manipulate events and outcomes to the advantage of the Soviet Union. It was far more than a mere spy agency. It was a pervasive and powerful instrument of state control. It was the ever-watchful eye, the omnipresent ear, and the iron fist of the Soviet state, ensuring conformity and suppressing dissent. For nearly 4 decades, the KGB's pervasive influence would indelibly define the USSR's global ambitions, its internal order, and its relationship with the world. The KGB was a sprawling, complex organization, a multi-headed machine with tentacles reaching into every aspect of Soviet life. Its bureaucratic structure was vast and intricate. It was meticulously designed to serve the Communist Party's every need, acting as its eyes, ears, and enforcer. At its top stood the chairman, a figure of immense power, answering directly to the Politburo, the highest decision-making body in the Soviet Union. This direct line of command ensured the agency's unwavering loyalty to the party and its ideological principles. Its headquarters, the infamous Lubyanka building, became a chilling symbol of fear, repression, and the immense power of the Soviet state. The first chief directorate handled foreign espionage, the KGB's outward-facing arm, recruiting agents from all walks of life, stealing secrets from around the globe, and waging psychological warfare against the West, aiming to undermine its values and sow discord. The second chief directorate focused on counterintelligence, the internal security apparatus, rooting out Western spies and double agents, and relentlessly monitoring Soviet society for any signs of subversion or dissent. Other directorates managed border security, controlling who entered and exited the Soviet Union, ideological policing, ensuring adherence to communist doctrine, and the personal protection of party leaders, shielding them from any potential threats. The fifth chief directorate, created in 1967, was specifically tasked with combating ideological subversion, targeting political dissent in all its forms, religious groups deemed a threat to the state, and artists whose work deviated from the approved socialist realism. The KGB's tentacles reached into every corner of Soviet life, creating a pervasive atmosphere of surveillance and control, making it a secret police, intelligence agency, and guardian of the regime all at once, a powerful and feared institution. Its complex structure ensured that no threat, foreign or domestic, could escape its watchful eye, went unnoticed or unpunished. The KGB's omnipresence shaped the daily reality of millions, fostering an environment of fear and self-censorship. The KGB's evolution was shaped by the men who led it. Ivan Serov, its first chairman, embodied the agency's brutal origins but was soon replaced as the party sought a subtler approach. Yuri Andropov, chairman from 1967 to 1982, transformed the KGB into a sophisticated instrument of both repression and global influence. Andropov institutionalized the fight against dissent and championed disinformation campaigns, making the KGB a master of psychological warfare. He promoted a new generation of educated officers and provided the Politburo with critical intelligence, eventually rising to lead the Soviet Union himself. In the final years, Vladimir Khrushchev, a hardliner, resisted Gorbachev's reforms and led the failed August coup of 1991. Khrushchev's actions hastened the collapse of both the KGB and the Soviet state. The agency's leaders left a legacy of both fear and formidable intelligence tradecraft. Their choices shaped the fate of the USSR and the world. The Cambridge Five, Philby, McLean, Burgess, Blunt, and Cairncross, were the KGB's most devastating Western assets. Recruited at Cambridge in the 1930s, these true believers infiltrated the highest levels of British intelligence. Kim Philby, the most notorious, passed critical secrets to Moscow, exposing Western operations and agents. Their betrayal compromised Allied missions, led to the deaths of operatives, and gave the Soviets a strategic edge for years. The unmasking of the Five shattered trust within Western intelligence and haunted counterintelligence efforts for decades. Philby's eventual defection in 1963 confirmed the scale of the damage. The Cambridge Five case remains a masterclass in ideological recruitment and agent handling. It exposed the vulnerabilities of even the most secure institutions. The KGB's illegals were deep-cover agents, living under false identities in the West with no diplomatic protection. These operatives spent years mastering language, culture, and their fabricated backstories. Their mission to blend in, build relationships, and wait, sometimes for decades, for activation. The process, known as leavening, created sleeper agents who could access targets unreachable by traditional spies. Rudolf Abel, one of the most famous illegals, ran a spy network in New York before his capture in 1957. The Illegals program revealed the KGB's commitment to long-term strategic infiltration. These agents targeted not just secrets, but people who might one day hold influence. Their existence shocked the American public and intelligence community. The program's high risk was matched by its potential for high reward. It remains a testament to the KGB's patience and ambition. Aldrich Ames, a career CIA officer, became the KGB's most damaging mole inside American intelligence. Motivated by greed and resentment, Ames began selling secrets to the Soviets in 1985. He exposed nearly every CIA asset in the USSR, leading to arrests and executions. The CIA's operations in the Soviet Union were crippled overnight. For years, the agency failed to suspect one of its own, allowing Ames to continue undetected. He was paid millions, living far beyond his means while red flags were ignored. Only a meticulous financial investigation finally brought him down in 1994. Ames's betrayal blinded the US at a critical moment in the Cold War's final years. His actions cost lives, destroyed networks, and exposed the vulnerabilities of even the most secure agencies. The Ames case remains a cautionary tale of insider threat and institutional denial. It marked one of the darkest chapters in CIA history. The KGB's most pervasive role was domestic, enforcing ideological conformity and crushing dissent within the USSR. The Fifth Chief Directorate targeted writers, scientists, religious believers, and anyone who challenged the party line. Methods ranged from warnings and surveillance to job loss, exile, and forced psychiatric treatment. Prominent dissidents like Andrei Sakharov and Alexander Solzhenitsyn faced exile or expulsion. The use of punitive psychiatry broke the will of many, discrediting dissent as madness. The KGB's vast informant network created a society of fear and mistrust. Creativity and critical thought were stifled, forcing millions to live double lives. The agency's repression prevented organized opposition, but left the nation brittle and stagnant. The cost was the Soviet Union's soul, a society unable to adapt or reform. Gorbachev's reforms of glasnost and perestroika aimed to bring openness and restructuring to the Soviet system. These reforms, however, inadvertently unleashed forces that would ultimately lead to the unraveling of the Soviet Union. In the late 1980s, unleashed forces of dissent and nationalism, forces that the KGB, even with its vast network and resources, could not contain. Public criticism, once unthinkable under the iron fist of the communist regime, eroded the party's authority, revealing its vulnerabilities and its disconnect from the people, and exposed past crimes, atrocities that had been buried for decades under layers of propaganda and secrecy. Hardliners like KGB chief Khrushchev, deeply entrenched in the old ways, saw these changes not as progress, but as existential threats to the Soviet state and their own power. In August 1991, Khrushchev and other hardliners, desperate to regain control, launched a coup to halt reform, reverse the tide of change, and preserve the old order at any cost. The coup, however, failed. Ordinary citizens and even some soldiers defied the plotters, refusing to follow their orders, and the KGB's aura of invincibility and power was shattered beyond repair. The failure of the coup accelerated the Soviet Union's disintegration, pushing it towards its inevitable end. By October 1991, the KGB, once the most feared intelligence agency in the world, was officially dissolved, its vast directorates and departments split into newly formed agencies, each with its own mandate. The SVR, or Foreign Intelligence Service, took over the responsibilities of foreign intelligence gathering, while the FSB, or Federal Security Service, assumed the crucial role of domestic security and counterintelligence. The KGB's extensive archives, its experienced personnel, and its well-honed methods of intelligence collection survived, repurposed and adapted for the needs and priorities of the new Russian state. Its dissolution, therefore, was more of a transformation and reorganization, rather than a complete erasure of its capabilities. The complex and often controversial legacy of the KGB would continue to shape the trajectory of Russia long after the Soviet flag fell from the Kremlin, signaling the end of an empire. The end of the KGB marked the definitive end of an era of Soviet dominance and ideological control. But it certainly did not signify the end of its pervasive influence on Russia's security apparatus and political landscape. The KGB's dissolution in 1991 was only the start of its next chapter. Many former officers joined Russia's new security services or entered business and organized crime. The most significant legacy, Vladimir Putin, a former KGB officer, rose to power and brought fellow Siloviki with him. Under Putin, the Russian state revived KGB-style tactics, information control, political warfare, and targeted assassinations. The agency's methods, from disinformation to covert action, now thrive in the digital age. Poisonings and foreign operations echo the KGB's old playbook. The KGB's influence extends beyond Russia, serving as a model for other regimes. Its history is a cautionary tale about unchecked secret police power. The shadows of the Lubyanka still stretch into the present, shaping global affairs. The KGB's legacy endures, a reminder of the dangers and temptations of state power wielded in secret.